Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this special webinar edition on ASEAN Nuclear Regional Cooperation. Today, we are delighted and excited to be joined by panelists from the ASEAN countries, namely Dr. Raja from Malaysia. We have Ms. Rebecca Lee from the Energy Market Authority in Singapore, Pak Ruli Hidayatullah from the ASEAN Center for Energy, Kun Panupong Pingish from Thailand, the Office of Atom of Peace. We have also Dr. Asnasio Lasman, who is a member from the National Energy Council in Indonesia, and also Mr. Patrick Aquino, who is a Director of Nuclear from the Department of Energy in the Philippines. This panel will be moderated by Mr. George Borovas, the head of Global Nuclear from Huntington. Without further ado, let me introduce George. And George, please get the panel started. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zaf. Good morning to everybody. As Zaf mentioned, I'm George Borovas. I'm the head of Huntington's Global Nuclear Practice. I am based in Tokyo, and I think it's very important for our conversation because the reason that our global law firm has me placed in Tokyo for the head of our nuclear practice is we believe in the development of new nuclear in Asia. And I cannot tell you how excited I am about this panel. It's been a long time that we've been having these discussions. I remember having these discussions with Zaf and a number of good friends here in 2008 and 2009. So it's been 17 years. It was an exciting time then. Then we had the events of Fukushima, of course, that created the challenges that we are all familiar, that slowed down, canceled, modified the different various nuclear programs. But now here we are again, and there is a renewed interest, as you know. There is a renewed energy when it comes to the potential of nuclear for the sustainable development of our Asian economies and societies. And I think this time it's actually in a much more mature, sophisticated manner. But the challenges still remain on how we're going to set these things together. The fundamentals for having new nuclear in all of these countries are there. They never ever change. We all knew them in 2008. We still know them in 2025. And that is sustainable development, growing economies, growing societies, and we need power, clean power that is not going to contribute to climate change. We cannot afford to have imports of fossil fuels with the geopolitical risks and the climate change issues that come with that, and also understanding the limitations that the intermittent nature of renewable energy has. So nuclear is a must for the region, and we all understand that. The question is now, how do we go about doing it? There's always a lot of discussions, and there's a lot of planning and thinking, but at some point we have to start seeing people digging and start creating new nuclear power plants, and that takes a lot. Going from the planning to the actual construction is not an easy task, and it requires a lot of effort, a lot of thinking, a lot of considerations. One of the main issues, of course, is financing and figuring out how we're going to afford these plants, how are you going to put them, how are you going to deal with the large reactors versus SMRs question. And there is a lot of developments in that area as well. The issue about financing and new nuclear has been changing in the past few years. Last year in New York, we heard the 14 major global banks saying that nuclear is essential and that they, with their policies, are going to start supporting the development of new nuclear for the tripling of nuclear energy capacity by 2050, as was decided after COP28. And that is a massive change. Now, practically speaking, what that means is not clear yet, but even the fact that these banks went on the record and said that they're willing to support nuclear is a big change. Just this morning, I was just reading an article in the Financial Times saying that the new US administration is going to be pushing the World Bank to start supporting new nuclear projects. And that is also a fundamental change and something we've been discussing for a very, very long time, ever since I was involved in nuclear, which is now 25 years. We've been talking about why aren't the multilateral institutions supporting new nuclear, which is an essential function for these institutions, these large infrastructure projects that can transform a country, that can transform a society. And this is what the world banks of the world do, and this is what they should be doing. We never understood why they were not supporting nuclear. So we're starting to see a renewed push from governments like the United States to support to push World Bank and the World Bank Group support nuclear, but also the same kind of push that's happening in Europe for the EBRD, in the EIB, and other multilateral institutions to start supporting nuclear. So a lot of excitement, a lot of potential, a lot of technologies. I think the young generation of people, a lot of us have been here for a long time. We're a little bit older, maybe a little bit wiser. I'm not sure about that. But we are here, but I'm starting to see a new generation of younger people that see nuclear in a much more exciting and much more energetic way, see this as part of their future, as a high-tech, great solution for the future for themselves, but also their societies. So how do we go about this? What are the challenges? What are the issues? How can we move together? And very importantly for the region here, how do we collaborate? Because I think one thing that has become clear in nuclear, for success of nuclear, is collaboration. There is an international nuclear community. There is the IAEA. There's a number of organizations. There's a number of initiatives around the world, and success requires collaboration with everybody. For our region here, because we also have a lot of kind of roots in how we collaborate in other areas, I think it's really important to consider what is it that we can do when it comes to nuclear. Certain things have to be done on a national level, but that doesn't mean that we cannot find ways to explore collaboration. So that's it. I don't want to speak too much. I think I want to hear more from our experts here to tell us about the development of their nuclear programs. And I'm going to then slowly turn the discussion to each of the panelists. Each of the panelists, so for the audience knows, we're going to have about 3 to 5 minutes. We can introduce some subjects about the particulars of the nuclear program. And then after that, we're going to discuss some general themes about collaboration and the future for nuclear for the region. And in the end, we will have some time for questions from the audience. So with that, I'm going to start to give it to Dr. Raja from Malaysia. In no particular order, I'm just looking at my screen who's next to me. So Dr. Raja, please go ahead and talk to us a little bit about Malaysia and the program there. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Firstly, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to share my views. Let me also, at the very outset, to emphasize that I'm not speaking on behalf of the government of Malaysia, and that has to be very clear at the very beginning. Yes, I agree with you, George. We are in very exciting times, in particular in ASEAN. There is a renewed interest. Some of them are renewed interests. And so what is common now that I see amongst the ASEAN member states is the commitments towards net zero carbon commitments. And that has been missing when Malaysia decided in 2011 to look at nuclear power. So that has added another reason for us to do that. With the phasing out of coal from our energy profile, there is a need for us to replace that with a more stable, a more dispatchable power source. And I think it's obvious that while we also look at renewables as a possible contribution to the energy basket, but nonetheless, nuclear stands out to be the most stable, dispatchable. What I meant is it's more ready to be dispatched into the systems that we have. So I think I've heard a lot of news amongst my neighbors that particularly Singapore and Thailand, that you have already signed Agreement 123. So that to me is a show of commitment, how serious you are into looking into nuclear power, how it can play a role in your national electricity generation plan. And I also know Philippines, for instance, is the most serious to look into how nuclear is. I think this is an opportunity for the ASEAN region to be working together. I'm not too sure that cooperation can be done almost immediately, because we seem to be working separately and independently. But I think it's worth noting that within the ASEAN framework, we have the Nuclear Energy Cooperation Subsector Network, which is under the ASEAN framework. And then we have the ASEAN TOM, which is a association of all the regulators within ASEAN. So we're not starting from zero for this cooperation. But everyone seems to be looking at SMRs now. I think you have to be very careful, because SMRs are non-proven technology. They will require several more years. So if you're ambitious about trying to introduce nuclear power in the next 5 to 6 years, then you will have to be looking at more proven technology, perhaps even a Gen 2 or a Gen 3 reactor, but in the magnitude of 300 to 500 megawatts. So that might be a good introduction to the whole system. But again, this will depend on individual governments to decide whether nuclear might play a role. And I think the public will still be concerned about how safety will be dealt with, and how nuclear waste and spent fuel will be dealt with. And I think this is where ASEAN member states can share with and cooperate amongst each other to see how best we can approach and manage this very well. In the past, there has been a common reactor, which is the Trigger Mark II reactor, which sorts of is in Indonesia, is in Philippines, and is in Malaysia. It was in Vietnam, but that has been modified. But then there was not much significant cooperation on the use and the use of the Trigger Mark II reactors. So I think if we were ever to go towards nuclear power, I think in the future we might have to see a common reactor which serves the region better. And I think as a force, as ASEAN member states, that would be the most logical. But I don't think it can be done within the next 10 years. It is in the next 10 to 20 years. And so we have to be working, perhaps SMR might be looked at, where we can develop together to have a look at that. And this is where I think we can work very well together. I will stop at that. Over to you, George, and over to our other colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raja. It's a great opening statement, and in general about the region, about Malaysia. And you're right, with the research reactors, there's a lot in the region. There's a lot of capability and knowledge. And I remember when we first met in 2008, I was so impressed with the depth and the knowledge that there is in Malaysia with respect to nuclear, from the technical side, the regulatory side, the international standard side. So I think that's something that we can all work together for the region to blossom based on that experience. But let me turn it over now to Ms. Rebecca Lee from Singapore, which is Singapore has had a very interesting discussion when it comes to nuclear. Many years ago, did a feasibility study on new nuclear. Then the events of Fukushima took over. But lately, we're seeing a lot of renewed interest. We saw the entering into the 123 agreement with the United States. So it would be great to hear a little bit about the program in Singapore. Ms. Lee, over to you.
So first of all, thank you for inviting 𝐓𝐈𝐌𝐄𝐒 to this panel. For Singapore, we are a small country and our access to alternative energy resources such as hydropower is limited. So it's important that we are open and informed about promising solutions, which includes nuclear energy. Nuclear energy can potentially help to address our climate change concerns without compromising on energy security and affordability. And although the large conventional reactor technologies are not suitable for deployment in Singapore, the newer technologies such as SMRs have the potential to offer significant improvements in safety and economics. And so this is the option that we are seriously studying for deployment. Although Singapore hasn't made a decision on deployment, our current priority is to accelerate capability building in areas such as technology selection, alongside safety and regulations. And we're training more nuclear scientists, such as via postgraduate scholarships in nuclear science and engineering. And recently, we have also launched a tender to tap on expert knowledge to study the safety performance of advanced nuclear reactors being developed globally. International partnerships are important for us to deepen our understanding of nuclear. As you mentioned, last year we signed the 123 agreement, which complements all our other ongoing cooperations with France, the UAE, as well as the IEA. And within ASEAN, cooperation is facilitated through platforms such as ASEAN TOM and NEC SSN, which can enhance regulatory activities and strengthen safety, security, and safeguards within the ASEAN community. Through these platforms, we will work with our neighbors to foster greater collaboration, to share best practices in nuclear safety, coordinate emergency planning and response, and jointly develop human resources. And Singapore remains committed to these platforms and will work closely with ASEAN on initiatives such as training courses and technical collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee and Ray. Good to hear about the initiatives that are coming out of Singapore and moving forward with respect to the development of nuclear in the region as well. And let me turn it over now to Mr. Aquino from the Philippines. Philippines has had a long history, of course, with the nuclear program, had developed a fully and constructed a new nuclear power plant many years ago. And we're eagerly waiting to hear more about what are the plans now for the future in the Philippines, which sounds pretty bright. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's an honor to be part of this topic. It's of great importance, actually, to our nation and the region's future, as a nuclear stands at a pivotal journey for our energy transition. As we increase our energy demand, along with our populations, there's a need for us to diversify our energy sources. And this is where the Philippines see the role of nuclear. In our most recent Philippine Energy Plan, 2023 to 2050, we've outlined our aspirational and ambitious targets to bring in 1,200 megawatts to our national grid by 2032, another 1,200 megawatts by 2035, and another 2,400 megawatts for 2040 and beyond. The Philippine government has taken concrete steps with the establishment of a Nuclear Energy Program Interagency Committee and its development of a national position. We have worked with the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, along the 19 infrastructure issues, having successfully completed the follow-up integrated infrastructure review mission last December. In the next 5 years, we envision, along with the rest of ASEAN, to take bolder steps to advance collaboration in terms of nuclear, whether it's on strengthening our regulatory frameworks, investing on capacity building of our people, engaging and fostering a dialogue with our people, as well as research and development. Rest assured, the Philippines remains committed to play an active role, and we believe that any regional cooperation can lead to the harnessing of nuclear energy in a more sustainable, safe manner to the benefit of all. And yes, we are likewise fortunate to have executed a 123 agreement with the United States, which took effect last July 2024. We are also in the middle of a feasibility study to examine our existing built-up nuclear power plant that was mentioned earlier. It will look into the possibility of rehabilitating or a new. And we also take note of the developments and small modular reactors. There is an emerging consensus similar to what was shared by our colleagues in Malaysia that SMRs may be a little bit far off, and that our serious discussions now will be focused on the existing technologies, as well as, of course, the Gen 3 and Gen 4 reactors. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Regino, and very nice to hear about the developments in the Philippines. And you're correct, this is a big topic of conversation, not only in the region, but globally, about how do you deal with SMRs and the first-of-a-kind nature for most of them, as opposed to existing large reactors. And this is an ongoing debate. And in the discussion later on, I want to get a little bit more into that. Let me turn it over to Mr. Panupong Pingish in Thailand, so he can talk to us a little bit about what's happening in Thailand. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for your opportunity to be here. So in Thailand, we interested in the SMR now because we already draft we call PDP plan, our development plan for produce electricity. But right now it's still like a twilight zone. Waiting for approved by the government. And that plan is we put this SMR 2 unit in the end of the plan. It's why we interested the nuclear technology, because the proportion of electricity produced in Thailand is not so good, because right now we produce from natural gas 60% and coal 20% and renewable just only 20%. Is the target of us is because it's a national statement at the COP26. We have the target to reach 40% with adequate timely and equitable support for to the carbon neutrality and go to the net zero. I agree with Mr. Raja. Because SMR is not proven technology now. It's very difficult to regulate, because I'm from a regulatory body side. So now it's more than, I think it's 80 design. Which one you have to focus? We didn't know now. And it's for the long time it's maybe okay, but it's for next 10 years I think it's very difficult. Because it's in ASEAN country sometimes we have to wait for approved technology. So right now I think it's just only 2 or 3 is like a prototype. In China it's not finished yet, and in US I think it's not finished. It's in last year maybe. That's why we interesting here. But it's for regulatory framework. It's now we prepare for everything, like treaty, like agreement, many things. It's both nuclear safety, nuclear security, and nuclear safeguard also. And now we starting for draft is civil liability, because if you integrating in some design, like in European or USA, so the one requirement is you have to make like a civil liability also. we still is already draft, but not finished yet. But we just starting. That is in the PDP is 2000. We call 2024, but it's still is drafting now. It's we think about security, economic, and ecology, because we have to go to this net zero in the future. That is Thailand situation now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pingic. And let's move on then to Indonesia. Dr. Nasho Lasman, you can tell us a little bit about the developments in Indonesia and nuclear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. May I make a small presentation?
Of course, of course.
Okay. Yes, the title is the NBP in the transition energy scenario to achieve the net zero emission. For us, the energy is the basic capital for development. Yeah. Therefore, ensuring the availability is a must. Therefore, for at least four things that underline the calculation. Yeah, first about there's a commitment for Paris Agreement, and the fossil energy resources are limited, and then the amount of subsidized continues to increase, and energy resilience. Therefore, it's necessary to optimize the use of new energy and renewable energy. In our definition, new energy is energy produced by new technologies. So nuclear technology in this context is nuclear for the production, electricity production is a new for us. Yeah. And there's others renewable energy. Okay, I continue. At present, we follow the national energy policy. This in the year 2014. In this national energy policy, nuclear is the last option. But at present, we have the renewable of national energy policy. This is the draft in the process. That the nuclear energy is to balance and achieve the decarbonization targets. So the terminology is a difference between the present national energy policy and the renewable energy policy. The renewable energy policy at present is approved by the House of Representatives, and later on by the President will be signing. Net zero emission, Indonesia is in the effort to achieve the net zero emission by 2060. Decarbonization of fossil fuels, yeah, replacing diesel generators with the gas-fired fuel generators and renewable energy, and also the second one, the phase down of several coal-fired plants with several nuclear power plants, large scale and also in the small scale, medium scale, large scale and small, medium scale, and also optimizing the use of renewable energy, solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, biomass, and so on, and managing the use of fossil fuels in accordance with the decreasing amount of fossil energy reserves. And then utilization of electric vehicles, and then hydrogen, and also co-firing. Planning about the NPP in this scenario of our transition energy scenario to achieve the net zero emission. By 2032, it's planned that a nuclear power plant with a capacity of at least 250 megawatts will be in operational. And by 2040, between 6 up to 8 gigawatt nuclear power plants will be operational. And by 2050, 16 gigawatt of nuclear power plants will be operational. And by 2060, 31 gigawatt of nuclear power plants will be operational. Total electricity generation from nuclear power plants until 2060 is around 10 up 11% of the total of electricity generation in Indonesia. The House of Representatives in middle April 2025, so 3 weeks ago, approved the draft government regulation on updating the national energy policy, in which nuclear energy plays a role in supporting energy security in Indonesia. Several candidates' location for nuclear power plant sites have been indicated, and at present, the strong candidate is in Bangka Belitung. It's not far from Batam or Singapore, and then also in West Kalimantan. Cooperation with the ASEAN countries can be developed in the field of nuclear technology and also the regulation. This is my short presentation. Thank you, George.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And last and not least, this is Ruli Hidayatullah, a senior expert from the Asian Center for Energy. And perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the function of the Asian Center for Energy and in your perspective for the region. May I ask everybody to mute your? We have a few background noise. Okay, thank you very much. Ruli, go ahead.
Thank you. Very good morning to all the distinguished audience and distinguished panelists. I will also say Ramadan Mubarak for our Muslim fellow who celebrated. It's been enough for me to discuss and share any progress and updates on the development in ASEAN with all of the audience and esteemed panelists. And thank you also for the business platform for the kind invitations to the ASEAN Center for Energy. So, as a short introductions, our organizations, the ACE, or ASEAN Center for Energy, is an intergovernmental organization which serves the interests of 10 ASEAN member states in terms of energy cooperation in the regions. We work closely with the focal points from the Ministry of Energy or Ministry of Industry or Ministry of Science and Technology or any related energy policy matter in ASEAN, providing capacity building and recommendations on related energy policy, and also spearhead and foster collaborations and operations on energy among the ASEAN member states and their partners or international organizations. So in the ASEAN Center for Energy, or ACE, we have a document called ASEAN Plan of ASEAN Energy Corporations, or we call it APIC. It's a guideline document of our operations. So under this APIC guideline, we cover topics of program area, which coal, gas, renewable energy, the energy efficiency, and civilian nuclear energy is one of our program area. So these regional nuclear corporations, or we call it NECSSN, Nuclear Energy Corporation Subsector Network, it's began in 2008. So even though there was no nuclear power plant in operation back then, even until now, but the ASEAN policymakers still look forward to the urgency of building the capacity and knowledge on the nuclear energy, update on any trends or technology and nuclear policy, so they are better prepared once they decide to build a nuclear power plant in the future. And currently, the nuclear energy also remains an attractive options for many countries in the regions, as they plan to achieve the carbon neutrality or nuclear emissions target between 2050 and 2060. I would also to mention one of our publications, which is the ASEAN Energy Outlook. So based on our findings in ASEAN Energy Outlook 8, which is launched in September 2024. It's expected that the demand of energy in ASEAN in 2050 will increase around 2 times compared to 2020 or 2023 level. So to meet demand, nuclear energy is also considered to fill the gap starting from around 2030s. So in the outlook, we also cover nuclear energy in specific chapter, discussing the challenge and the opportunities of the deployment in the regions. And the critical points that we highlight in the documents is the supporting policy and also national positions in nuclear energy. As also being discussed earlier, the 2025 is an exciting year of the nuclear sector. We mentioned about the COP 2028, COP 2029, or the triple nuclear energy Judge also mentions about the push from the US to for the World Bank to also cover nuclear, and also the shifting interest from the financial institutions, and also the interest comes also from the ASEAN member states. There's also a renewed interest from ASEAN member states, like among other, we have friends here from Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, who also regain interest in nuclear energy. So I'm beyond excited here to discuss any updates on nuclear in the regions, and also any initiatives that we can work on together. So I think I will stop there, and looking forward to any discussions this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hidayatullah. So I think with that, we have now opening remarks from all of our panelists, and we can enter now into the discussion phase of our panel this morning. As Azaf mentioned, please use the Q&A button to list any questions you may have, and we're going to select some of them and have a discussion with our panelists, if it's for the whole panel or for individual members. But let me start out first with some general questions. And first of all, I wanted to ask each of the panelists to tell us a little bit about the perceptions as well as the acceptance of nuclear in each of their countries. As we all know, with public acceptance is a very important consideration to introduce nuclear power in each country. Sometimes we see political parties that have different views. The position is for nuclear, the current party in power is against nuclear, and sometimes we need to see a consensus. We've seen globally that the perception for nuclear is changing for more positive, but it would be good to hear about if you have any latest information on what's happening in each of your countries with respect to nuclear and its acceptance by the political powers, the parties, but also with the public. So let me start with Dr. Raja, if you can tell us a little bit more about Malaysia.
Thank you, George. I think public acceptance and public perception are important, but I think more important is public awareness of what has developed within the nuclear power sector, and that's very important. For me, at least, I've been carrying out some questionnaires whenever I speak to the public. There seemed to be a better acceptance than we had before in 2010. At least about 60 to 70% says that yes, they might want to the government to look at nuclear power. There has been no strong objection, but there are concerns that will nuclear power be safe, and things like whether a Fukushima might happen. All those things will have to be addressed. I think this is where the region can play a part, where we could have a concerted effort towards addressing the public's concerns, really, because we are so close-knit and we are so near to each other that, if there are concerns within Malaysia, there will be concerns in Singapore or in Indonesia. And likewise, vice versa. If Indonesia were to start its nuclear power, then there are concerns. I think before you can do that, it is very important that the regulatory and legal infrastructure be in place, so that we are able to then say, look, the nuclear power that is going to be introduced by these states is going to be highly regulated, both from safety, security, and safeguards points of view. And that would be a plus point now. So if we had every one of us to be to have the highest standard of safety, and for everyone to be parties to the Nuclear Safety Convention, for instance, and the joint convention on waste and spent fuel management. for instance, and the other would be on physical protection. Then we as a region are seen to be very serious about how important it is that the nuclear power that is going to be introduced in the region will be highly regulated, will be under the auspices of the IAEA on safeguard matters, because I think in safeguards issues, there's no problem. Everyone is an NPT member here. Everyone has a comprehensive safeguards agreement, and everyone has also signed their additional protocol. So from that point of view, we will be looked from the vendor state's point of view to have met at least the basic. But I think for Malaysia, I think this is one of the areas that we have to be looking at, and I think that will contribute much to public awareness and public acceptance to review and to change the nuclear and the Atomic Energy Act of 1984, to update it, to introduce the latest standards by the IAEA. And so I think that will be very important. But having said that, I also note that in Indonesia, for instance, there's a very high percentage of people who accepts the nuclear power technology. But then there is a hesitancy on Indonesia to embark on nuclear power. So I think it's important, yes, but I don't think it is a determinant whether you should embark on nuclear power. I'll stop there, George, and I think thank you.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Raja. And certainly, I think the issue about public acceptance is one of the key items that I think can be and should be addressed in a regional level, because what happens in one country might have effects on the other countries. And perhaps we can turn over to Ms. Lee at Singapore. Tell us about your views and Singapore's views on public acceptance within the country, but also how do you see development of nuclear from other countries in the region?
So for Singapore, we do continue to engage the public regularly to build Singaporeans' acceptance of nuclear. One challenge with public acceptance could also be the fact that most of the advanced designs are still undergoing development and they have yet to be commercialized, which is something that was mentioned by many of the panelists today. So this could be one barrier for public acceptance, the fact that some of these designs have yet to be proven. So we are closely monitoring these developments, and then concurrently, we'll also continue to build our capabilities in nuclear safety, security, and safeguards.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Aquino, from the Philippines perspective, since you are in pretty advanced stages of discussions and deliberations about your program, I was wondering, have you had any kind of polling done about public acceptance and the views of the public, and how are you addressing that with initiatives in order to get more support for the nuclear program there?
Well, in the Philippines, we did have a 2019 survey that indicated that almost 70% of the public was in support of a nuclear plant, whether it's rehabilitating the existing one that we never got to operate or building a new one. We did another survey last year, and it increased, actually. The most concern that we have from the public is while safety is in the top 5, the top of mind issue in the Philippines is actually on the cost. That's why working with our private sector partners and even our international colleagues would be essential, because the upfront cost of nuclear power is very high, but there is already a realization in terms of the public that for us to reach our decarbonization targets, whether you call it net zero or lower emissions, nuclear would have to be part of that equation. And that's why we're working hard on further improving this, the acceptance level that we have. But on the other items, the other concerns really is on the end of life of those nuclear power plants. And that's something that we're actively working with our international peers. That's about it for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aquino. Mr. Pengish, in Thailand, do you have any kind of latest information about the public views on nuclear and its acceptance or concerns that the public might have?
Yes, in Thailand, it's about 5 years ago we have made a survey for public. Is the major of the public is happy with the nuclear, but in not their backyard. It's for how I say, it's they don't think about carbon neutrality or net zero or so many things. They think about is economy, because it's right now is the price of the electricity is really high. If the nuclear is the lower than the price is lower than other, is they think about that. But it's as I mentioned, is the major problem is in Thailand is the public acceptance, but it's not in their area. They agree, but it's not in their area, something like that. This is the information from Thailand.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Lasman, can you tell us a little bit more about Indonesia and maybe the trends that you see and the views on nuclear in Indonesia over the years?
Yes, public awareness is important, and we do the public information is the public information should be done continuously. More than 2-3 years ago, the public acceptance, especially in the West Kalimantan, is about 81%. But so I don't know. Is this enough? Enough, but in the reality, if we get example from French, 7-8% of the electricity generation coming from nuclear energy. But there is also people against of the NPP. So as far as I understand, that the NPP could be construct effectively if this is because of the president policy or government policy or the state policy. So public awareness, public information should be give continuously, but the government should be given direction or good planning to construct the NPP. So thank you, George.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lasman. And Mr. Hidayatullah, from your perspective, do you have any data from the region on trends that you've seen with respect to public acceptance? Is that something you've looked at?
Yeah, thanks. We conducted a survey in 2021 and 2024, if I'm mistaken. So there's a huge difference. I think in 2021, 2024. In 2024, we observed a shift of interest in nuclear energy. So basically, we conduct this survey to public in ASEAN in 10 member states. Even though the samples of the audience or sample of the survey is not that big enough, and when we look out the backgrounds mostly are, I mean, the field of the surveyor are our network. So it's come from the energy, still from the energy sectors, not really covering the public engineer, but from that data we can see that some shifting, especially from the energy policy makers on their interest. Another things that we highlight from our study is we should see this not as a public acceptance, but as a public engagement, because when we see, sometimes we always think that public, of course, public is a big stakeholders. I mean, the local community, the public engineer is a big stakeholders, but we should also look out the other stakeholders as stakeholders, we need to get convinced. For example, the financial institutions, other ministers, such as the Minister of Environment, other stakeholders on the nuclear project. So and the third things is we should look out this public acceptance, not just one-way communications, but two-way communications. So what are the public concern? What are the financial institution concern? What are the related stakeholder concerns? So there should be a kind of platform to discuss in a both ways. So the trust will be gained when the stakeholders meet and share their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I really like that kind of distinction, the way that you described it, that this is not just a static, public acceptance, let's do a poll, people are against nuclear or for nuclear, and therefore that's it. It is a dialogue. And in the experience that we've seen around the world is that the more people know about nuclear, the more they understand the facts about nuclear, the more supportive they are. I think that as an industry, we've not been very successful in communicating the positives of nuclear. And sometimes we have the focus on defending the so-called negatives, which are not as negative as they appear sometimes, but also we don't have the affirmative case on why nuclear is not only necessary, but possibly, in my view at least, the best solution that we have for sustainable development. And I think if a clear messaging and addressing the issues to the public, but engaging with them, I think you're going to start seeing that the public responds to that. And I've seen this globally happen in remarkable ways when people understand this. And I'm sure that all of you has had this experience also on a personal level. When you talk to somebody at a party and are gathering and they're, generally they're anti-nuclear, and you explain to them how things work and what's going on and what has happened in the past, and they're always surprised, like, oh, I had no idea it was this way. So I think this public engagement, as you said, is really important to move things forward. But going over now to the issue about regional cooperation, I think obviously this is going to be one thing that is really important to engage on, because this is something that can be regionally wide, and you have to address it from a regional perspective, especially with countries that are located close by, because there could be potential effects or perceived effects on each other's sovereign areas with respect to a potential accident. So, addressing safety and security is really important on a regional level. But are there other things that you think with the existing framework in the ASEAN region that are ripe for collaboration in order to support your nuclear programs? I mean, Dr. Raja, you mentioned before some potential things that you could do, but and I'm opening this up to the entire panel. I don't want to ask each one of you, but maybe anybody that wants to have kind of a few remarks about what do you think would be, here's something that would be great for us to collaborate on, or it's easy for us to collaborate on, because I can see there's some things are going to be easy, some things are going to be very difficult. Harmonizing things across the region might be something to discuss about, but it's not going to be easy. But I don't know, anybody would like to kind of take this question and think about what are the areas of collaboration that you think might be easy and ripe to do?
Yeah, maybe I can start first.
Yes.
Since it's some time from the regions. Well, other esteemed. Okay. Maybe Gato will add on later on. So as I mentioned before, in ASEAN there are some initiative or some working group. In nuclear, we have the NECSSN, the Nuclear Energy Cooperation Subsector Networks. So the main focal points are come from the energy regulator or energy energy policymaker, name it from the Department of Energy or Department of Industry or Department of Finance. So this NECSSN are the main stakeholder that the ASEAN Center for Energy working close with. We usually gather once a year, so we meet annually. So the focal points, and then the ASEAN Center of Energy, also the ASEAN Secretariat, and also we met with our dialogue partner and our in our international organizations such as with IAEA, the WNA as well, and other partners. So annually, we discuss the milestone, we discuss our priority and the potential collaborations that we were working with. We have the document called the 𝐓𝐈𝐌𝐄𝐒𝐓𝐀𝐌𝐏𝐒. So it's based on the ASEAN member state interest. Most of the activities are still on the capacity building activities, like the seminar, workshop on related topics on nuclear, like policy, regulatory framework, and then the technology as well. And also we conducted some study or research on, like I mentioned before, we conduct study on the public acceptance or public perspective, and also about the safety. So I think, yeah, that's what I can share from our side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else, any thoughts about, what are going to be good areas for collaboration? Dr. Raja, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, George. I think with the current framework, let's take, for instance, the Nuclear Energy Cooperation in the Subsector Network. I think there is no focus on nuclear power. So I think if we're serious, therefore, the representatives within the NEC SSN should be proposing to have a focus or in NEC SSN. But nonetheless, it will be just a focus amongst all the other focus of nuclear energy. So perhaps you may wish to, when it's more mature, you may wish to have a nuclear power subsector network, for which maybe ACE can take a lead on that. Here, nuclear power is not really looking at the research and development part. And so for Malaysia, it has always been MOSTI, the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, that takes a lead in NEC SSN. But in some, there's also the Ministry of Energy. But nevertheless, I think nuclear power is not about the sciences. It is not about licensing a nuclear installation. It's about licensing a nuclear power plant. So it involves way beyond the Nuclear Regulatory Board, and that moves me into the ASEAN TOM framework. So you have this ASEAN TOM, which looks at the nuclear regulatory framework, but they have never been looking at how to license a nuclear power plant. Yes, they can license a nuclear installation, but in Malaysia in particular, if you have a nuclear installation, you have got to go through the Atomic Energy Licensing Board to get a nuclear installation. But then for you to be able to generate electricity, you'll have to go to the Energy Commission for you to get a license to generate electricity. And if you don't generate electricity as you have promised in the power PPA, in the power purchase agreement, then you might be fined or be penalized because of that. But on the other hand, if you see the contradiction, on the other hand is for a nuclear regulatory body, if it looks at the safety and you are not in compliance with safety, they will stop the nuclear installation. So there's a difference between how a nuclear regulatory authority works and how the authority that issues the power purchase agreement works. So this is something that you have to look at, and any cooperation within maybe a cooperation within ASEAN will set the mood, will set the requirement for that. So that's very important. Perhaps ACE might be the right agency to take a lead of that. I've heard what you've said of carrying out workshops, training courses, but I think a discourse is needed now to see how the region will be able to work out on common denominators that we can accept. But on my last point is if the ASEAN member states are serious about nuclear power plants, then they will be having to look at the site evaluations. I know in Philippines they have already completed. They have Bataan, which it is a nuclear site anyway. And this is something that the expertise that they have that they might like to share to others, because you will know, George, how expensive it is for a very comprehensive site evaluation for a nuclear power plant will cost. It can be from 10 to 30 US million, depending on multiple sites, multiple devices. So over to you back, George. Thanks.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Raja. And I don't know if anybody else wants to add to this discussion about regional cooperation in areas. But a couple of things that yes, go ahead, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, George. The exchange experience between ASEAN countries is important to ensuring the safety and security and safeguards. Therefore, in my opinion, the collaboration could be done by strengthening the function of the ASEAN Center for Energy. So, with the exchange of experiences, we can each other can learn each other to ensure the safety, security, and safeguards. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so well noted on your inputs, Dato, and also Pak Asensio. So basically, actually in Center for Energy, in consultations with our stakeholders, we are now developing the SALT PAI 2026-2030. So that's our our planning in 5 years ahead, how our organizations will operate. So that's our guideline. So for specific nuclear topics, yes, we address we address a specific nuclear on our power sectors, and another specific topics that highlighted. Of course, it's based on our consultations with the member states from Malaysia, from Indonesia, and one of the most important topics that they want to be covered is the financing and also the waste management strategies, especially what's the regional standard, or what is the regional approach on that. So yeah, we're doing a on that. So hopefully the PAI 2026-2030 also will cover more stakeholders, not only the energy specific stakeholders, but also from the Ministry of Science, Technology, and other stakeholders. So we can also enlarge our operations and topics of coverage. Thank you.
Thank you. And may I add to this discussion, and just from perspective of looking at this from a development side, and what does it make it easier for the industry to engage in each of your countries? I think a couple of things would be important that I think are practical steps. I understand it's always good to have discussions. It's always very good to have workshops, and you get to know each other. You get to start collaborating, exchanging of information. The vendors and the bidders that are going to come in order to build your nuclear power plants are going to be looking for certain things. They're worried about risk. They're worried about challenges that they might have. They're worried about your regulatory environment. So, collaboration and clarity about the issue, for instance, which is always a top issue, nuclear liability, getting into the right conventions, making sure that from the regional approach, you are in the same conventions, which means that there's not going to be liability in neighboring countries. It's just a huge thing. So if you do that, that would be a great way, for instance, to collaborate. That would be one wonderful way. Another way would be to say, look at the regulatory regimes and see how you can make things a bit consistent in terms of what it is that you're examining, how do you examine it, what are the processes, procedural things. So there's more visibility and clarity, just so somebody that starts building a nuclear plant, for instance, in the Philippines, is going to come next to Malaysia and is going to say, oh, we're familiar with this. We understand how that works. All these things lower the risk, and nuclear always does better when you just repeat more of the same as opposed to doing something new every time. Finally, one point that I would like to suggest also, as we're looking at these multilateral institutions like the World Bank that are considering nuclear, I think if you all spoke with one voice through whatever potential ASEAN's kind of structure you can, to go back to the World Bank and just say, as a region, as shareholders, but also as a region, we think it's vitally important for the World Bank to supporting nuclear. I think that can have a very powerful impact. Because the United States is doing its part because it wants to push for World Bank to support nuclear, but there's also could be the perception of, oh, here it is, the United States imposing its will on the World Bank. But if you have a number of countries that are coming together, smaller shareholders, but still yet shareholders of the World Bank, and just say, as a region and as your shareholders, we want you to get involved in nuclear, I think that can have a very powerful impact. So just a suggestion that I leave out there. And we're getting a lot of great questions, I must add, from our audience, which is fantastic to see the engagement here. And what really struck me is a question that we got here about the level of private industry engagement on your respective nuclear power programs. This is really interesting because, we think of nuclear obviously as something that's government driven, and no question it needs government support. But at the same time, there is private industry. A lot of your countries have very, very sophisticated power producers, utilities that, really know how to do great big projects. And so, again, without going through the entire panel, can, you give me your perspectives about what's happening with terms of private industry? Are they interested in supporting the nuclear program? Are they concerned about certain things? I mean, I don't know, Mr. Aquino, I know that your nuclear utilities, your utilities in the Philippines are taking the lead and looking at some of the things. Perhaps this is something that you can tell us a little bit more about how the private industry looks at nuclear in the Philippines, and anybody else as well.
Yeah, in terms of, that's correct. Financing is something of a big issue right now. There are OECD policies in place that, vendor countries have to observe. They really cannot undercut the price when it comes to financing the nuclear. They have countries that buy into nuclear have to start paying, I think, by year 10. That's the minimum. And then the access to concessional financing, typically OECD rules, prevailing OECD rules require us some sort of sovereign guarantee. And that's something of the challenge for us. But what the Philippines is doing, as mentioned earlier, is that while we do have the firm regulatory framework for the safeguards being codified and strengthened, on the commercial side of things, our Energy Regulatory Commission and the Philippine Department of Energy is working towards issuing policies and regulations that take into consideration the unique nature and characteristics of a nuclear power project, the high upfront cost, the long gestating period, and that the terms of an ordinary power sales agreement might not be squarely applicable to nuclear power projects. And these are things that have been echoed by our colleagues in the private sector. And to be clear, as I did respond to a question in the Q&A box, the Philippine government has not yet made a clear decision as to what stake it would take on a nuclear power project. If you personally ask me, this is not the government position. Offers the lands. The one probably in Bataan is well suited for it with all of its infrastructure and interconnection. And that's where you situate the plant. Personally, again, it would be a minority stake with the bulk of it coming from private sector and, of course, access to concessional financing. But just to zero in on the concern, I think financing, the World Bank has yet to make a clear region. That's something we can push multilateral agencies like the World Bank to actively adopt. Thank you.
Dr. Raja, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's a good question. In 2010, when the Malaysian Nuclear Power Corporation which was the NEPIO then, did feasibility studies on how nuclear power can feature in the in the energy policy. There was no direct interest by utility companies, but of late, in this renewed revival of looking at nuclear power, we see that the utility companies, including the independent power producers, are investing to see how they can position themselves into being a developer, operator, and owner of nuclear power plants. And I think that's a very big difference. So in 2010, it's only just the government that was interested, and this time around, it is both ways. So I think that makes a huge case for nuclear power to be looked at, because if there's interest from the private sector, then the financing will be much clearer on how we should proceed. Nuclear energy is one of those technologies that both the government and the private sector, or the owner of the power plant, will have to be working together with. And so this is very important. But I think, and besides that, also, I think it's also important to have bipartisan acceptance in the parliament, bipartisan acceptance of introducing nuclear power, and that's very important. And with the role that is being played by the private sector, it then reflects that that this is not initiative by the current government. It's an initiative by the utility companies, and that therefore any government that comes into power will have to look at it very carefully. So I think this is a very important point to be made. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Raja. And that is important. I mean, that is a very big concern for anybody who's going to try to spend time in the development of a nuclear program. If you feel that there's going to be a consistency about the program, irrespective of who's going to be in power, it gives you a lot of comfort. If you think that with the change of minister, the change of government, the policy might change 180 degrees, then that's certainly something that is concerned. So having the private industry and the utilities involved in this is going to help to produce some stability, just so, yes, it is a government kind of course supported program, but the private industry is also a big part of this. And this is also the emerging structures that we're seeing, like the emergence of PPPs, public-private partnerships, in order to develop nuclear programs, which are, can take many forms, but I think it could end up being kind of the best, most effective solution. Mr. Pingish, I see your hand you've raised your hand about, you want to say something?
Yes, may I share, it's in Thailand situation now. So last year is one of the big companies interested in the nuclear technology. High technology, because they have their own industrial zone. They need not only electricity, they also need steam, they also need heat. They consult in our office how to make a nuclear technology in their zone, but it's not in the near future, but it's maybe in the long term. They're waiting for another one from the government first, and they will follow them. And they need to use a very high technology, like a high temperature, something like that, or floating reactor, something. It's amazing. This is I share this Thailand situation.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to say anything about private industry?
Yeah, George.
Yes.
At present, I mean, I add my information that at present the Indonesian had set up the acceleration team for constructing NPP, nuclear power plant. And hopefully this team could be established in this year. So but the funding and so on. So later on the team will contact with the World Bank, for example. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lassman. Okay, so I mean, there's one of the things that we're starting to see in various countries, in the United States very importantly, but also in other regions as well, is the emergence of the data centers and artificial intelligence centers as drivers for the need for nuclear. And going back to private industry involvement, I think that's probably the most clear path that I've seen lately on how you might get private industry supporting the nuclear. And I don't know if everybody has seen the news, but over the past year, Amazon, Google, Meta, Facebook, Microsoft, they have all started studying nuclear as a option to power their very ambitious plans for data centers and artificial intelligence. And I wanted to hear from you if you have been had any discussions or if you've seen these companies talking to you about data centers in the region and that they would see that as being a possible path for developing the nuclear, and especially SMRs. And if anybody would like to have that question. Okay, Dr. Raja.
Yeah, I think Malaysia has been lucky in that sense. Most of the countries that you have mentioned, potential owners of data centers, including Singapore, is looking at Malaysia as hosting these data centers. And I've seen studies that shows that over and above business as usual, taking into account normal development of industries, growth of the industries, as well of growth of population, we expect about a 10% increase over year to year on the demand by AI and data centers in particular. And I think that's a huge challenge, a huge challenge. One of the strengths of Malaysia is we've got a very good grid in the peninsula, and therefore, if these data centers were to bring in their own power sources, they would be able to inject at any point of the grid, and they will be able to draw their electricity where they would be headquartered or located in Malaysia. And I think that's very good. Now, for now, it is fine. We are in surplus of power. We are able to cater for those. But I think come year on next, we will have to seriously look into how nuclear power can play a role in this to make sure that there's enough power. And some of these data centers, we're talking about 20 gigawatts electric per year. It's huge. It's huge. And not only that, it is also water. And therefore, SMRs comes into mind into perhaps providing desalination of seawater as a cogen process for them, or even in some of the reactors that are supposed to be looked at. So I think nuclear power plants will be able to cater for those, including the water and the electricity requirements. But the government will have to decide whether it is a good way of investing to make sure that we are attractive towards these data centers. And data centers have a requirement that the power that it gets is low carbon. So you would not be able to power it with coal. Or otherwise, those data centers will not come to Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raja. Anybody else want to touch upon the subject of AI data centers?
Yeah, so I think not particularly in AI, but that in Indonesia in 2023 or 2024, there's some operations on the SMR deployment, the feasibility on SMR deployment from the private sectors. For example, in 2023, the NuScale under USTDA, under USTDA corporations are working together with PLN, the Indonesian utility, to conduct the feasibility study on the SMR deployment in one of the Indonesian area. So we haven't heard any updates or publicly report on that, but yeah, hopefully it's also one of the a good sign that interest on the SMR will ultimately we can get any updates or any deployment of SMR in the regions. Another example, I think there's also another MOU or operations between Indonesian like ammonia company with the Danish with Copenhagen Atomics to deploy the SMR design for the ammonia productions, the hydrogen production. So instead of only for electricity, this particular MSR or molten salt reactor design is also plan to produce the ammonia. We haven't heard any publicly documents or any reports on this, but yeah, hopefully there's also a good sign for the SMR deployment in the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's pretty remarkable, I must say, in the change that has happened in the past few years when it comes, not even too few years, I would say the past year, when it comes to the SMRs. And if you look at the United States again and the deal that Microsoft signed for the reopening of 3 Mile Island, that was a huge change in the U.S. nuclear industry, but also all the other providers of services that are looking now seriously at nuclear and partnering with potential technology developers. And as Dr. Raja was mentioning, the needs for the electricity and the power that they have are enormous, and they're expanding exponentially. And their only limitation is power, low carbon, baseload power. So I think it can be a driver for a lot of the nuclear programs in the region as well. And that could be another area of collaboration to think about data center companies in the region and how you can help them place them in the region. I know that we're running into the end of our panel, so maybe I can allow each one of you to give some closing remarks, potentially maybe whatever topic you would like to have as a closing remark, but maybe looking at the future and how you see the nuclear program developing over the next 20 years, for instance, let's say. And maybe we can start with you, Dr. Raja.
Thank you. There's not much else that I can add, but I'm very excited in the work that I've done in Malaysia. I agree with you that the younger generation is coming up and showing interest in nuclear power, and that's very encouraging. I think the region as well, ASEAN, with the signing of agreements 1, 2, 3 by Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, Philippines. It only leaves Malaysia, who has not signed an agreement 1, 2, 3. And I think the government will have to consider whether it's worth signing on. But of course, besides the agreement 1, 2, 3, there are other governmental agreements, intergovernmental agreements, which has to be signed. There are conventions that needs to be signed by Malaysia for it to be parties to, in particular which is related to nuclear power development. I think there's a need for us to look at at the repeal of our Act 304 on the Atomic Energy Licensing Act. And I think most of the other states have done that. I think after Fukushima and after Chernobyl, the 1984 Act is somewhat behind time. And therefore we need to update that, and we are way behind. So with that said, I think it's a question of time for the policymakers to decide. I think the choice is obvious. It's either nuclear or we will have to burn coal again, just like Germany. But now Germany is reverting back to nuclear power again. But we rely on FDI, foreign direct investment, and therefore we have to be attractive, and we cannot be seen to be burning coal to support the electricity.
Thank you.
Thank you, George, and thank you, Zeph, for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raja. Ms. Leaves, any concluding remarks from Singapore?
I think there's much that we can learn from the international sphere and other ASEAN member states. So international and regional cooperations will continue to be very critical for Singapore, especially to support our capability building process. So we need to put in place the necessary competencies and infrastructure before any decision is made, which includes areas of technology selection and site selection. And we'll continue to tap on platforms such as ASEAN TOM and NECSSN for sharing of best practices and experiences in the area of nuclear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. Mr. Aquino from the Philippines, any concluding remarks?
Just very quickly, of course, it's you know, as the region really seriously considers nuclear, the Philippines has been advocating on building a pool at the regional level, whether it's on safety, whether it's on regulatory, because any decision by one country, since we're a small region, would affect the rest. So it's very important that we continue to engage with each other and do the messaging, because, you know, we're just neighbors. Maybe the Philippines will be the first to actually operate a nuclear power plant, maybe Vietnam, maybe Thailand. But the important thing is that at the region-wide level, we're able to address and communicate these key concerns, because those are the same concerns that every ASEAN member state citizenry is of concerned with. Thank you.
Very true. Thank you very much, Mr. Aquino. Mr. Pengish from Thailand, anything?
Okay, this is my personal opinion. Is I think is one of ASEAN country, anyone is starting to operate nuclear power plant. I think it's another country will be followed, because it's really easy for the high level to decide the policy. I think it's really good for cooperation together. And we learn together, and it's maybe it's in the 20 years. Hopefully, it's in ASEAN region will have nuclear power plants in operation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lassman. Any concluding thoughts?
Yes, thank you, George. In this region, we have an advantage. There is a good cooperation between countries. Therefore, we should use this advantage to increase the safety and security safeguards, especially in the nuclear power plant construction in each country. And also the human resource development is important. So we can set up together in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lassman. Mr. Hidayatullah.
Okay, thanks. Just short conclusions. So yeah, currently we in a consultation with the ASEAN member states are developing the 𝐓𝐈𝐌 2026-2030, and in nuclear energy, our nuclear program is also included in that. So we are very happy to hear any input, any initiative on that. So we can hear any for example, any common interests, any common topics that we want to cover within the energy corporations in nuclear, and hopefully in 2020 we will see the first nuclear power plant in our regions within 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, first of all, for everybody and a wonderful panel discussion. Thank you very much, Zaf and NBP, for putting this together. Let me add one more concluding thought, is that, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm very excited about the prospects of nuclear in all of your countries. I saw that we had nuclear development in Asia and a few generations ago in Japan, then Korea, then China. And I can see that the next generation is going to be in your countries, where you're not only going to be building nuclear power plants, but eventually you can become providers and part of this wonderful industry. So with that, Zaf, I'll give it back to you so you can conclude the workshop.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks once again to all our participants and all the also online participants. I know some of you have not had your questions answered. You can always email those your questions, and we'll try to get the panelists to reply to your questions later on offline. But once again, thank you very much, Mr. Patrick Aquino, from the Department of Energy Philippines, Ms. Rebecca Lee, Energy Market Authority of Singapore, Dr. Panupong Pingish, Office of Atom of Peace from Thailand, Dr. Raja, Pak Ruli Hidayatullah from the ASEAN Center for Energy, and Dr. Lasman from National Energy Council of Indonesia, and of course George Borovas from Hunton. Thank you very much, and we hope that this will not be the last time that we all get it together. Let's keep the conversations going, and let's strive to have hopefully a nuclear power program in ASEAN, a successful one and a safe one too. Take care. Have a great day. See you, everybody. Bye bye.